The cargo bay of the Jothic warship hummed with the electric tension of a dozen plasma rifles aimed at a single human woman. Commander Vexlar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction as his warriors surrounded the intruder, their weapons trained on the slight figure in the worn combat suit. She had infiltrated their flagship, alone. The audacity would have been admirable if it weren't so foolish. Human, Vexlar's translator crackled, his four eyes studying the creature with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. The Jothic had been conquering worlds for 3 centuries, and in all that time, humanity had proven to be nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Soft, fragile, limited to a single pair of arms and laughably slow reflexes. You have made a grave error boarding this vessel. The woman stood perfectly still, her dark eyes scanning the circle of warriors with an unsettling calmness. Her hands hung loosely at her sides, and Vexlar noticed she carried no visible weapons. Perhaps the rumors of human stupidity were true after all. "Disarm her," he commanded. The woman's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. She raised her hands slowly, palms forward in what his database indicated was a gesture of surrender, but her voice when she spoke carried no trace of defeat. "That's your first mistake." Vexlar's mandibles twitched in confusion. "You mock me? You weaponless and alone, surrounded by the finest warriors of the Jothic Dominion?" "Weaponless." The human's smile widened. "Commander, you've been fighting humanity for 3 years now. Haven't you learned anything about us?" Before Vexlar could respond, the woman moved. Not with the blinding speed of a Jothic warrior or the brutal strength of a Krog berserker. She moved with something far more dangerous, purpose. Her raised hand snapped forward, and suddenly a warrior's plasma rifle was in her grip. She had yanked it from his grasp with a technique that used leverage and surprise rather than brute force. The weapon fired once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Not at the warriors, but at the overhead conduits. Coolant sprayed across the bay, obscuring vision. Emergency lights flickered. The Jothic evolved on a desert world. The human's voice echoed through the chaos. Low humidity, high heat tolerance. But you never adapted to rapid temperature changes, did you? The coolant, super-chilled for the ship's fusion cores, created a white fog that hung in the air. Vexlar watched his warriors begin to slow, their movements becoming sluggish as their bodies struggled with the sudden cold. Humans, he realized with growing horror, were adaptation specialists. They came from a world of extreme seasons, varied climates, and constant environmental challenges. Another mistake. The human was moving through his warriors now, not fighting them but evading them, using their own confusion against them. She slid under plasma bolts, rolled past sweeping claws, and always stayed in motion. When a warrior grabbed for her, she used his own momentum to throw him into his companions. When another tried to tackle her, she simply wasn't there. "Second mistake," her voice called out from somewhere in the fog. "You assumed disarmed meant helpless." A Jothic warrior swung his blade at the sound but struck only air. The human appeared behind him, having somehow scaled the cargo containers with those ridiculous single-paired hands. She kicked the blade from his grip, not with superhuman strength but with precision aimed at his wrist joint, and caught it before it hit the ground. "Humans don't just use weapons, Commander," she continued, her form barely visible through the dissipating coolant fog. "We improvise them. That's what happens when your species spends 100,000 years as persistence hunters, with no natural armor or claws. We learn to make everything a weapon." Vexlar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. Uncertainty. This human hadn't come to fight them. She had come to prove a point. "Third mistake," the woman said, now standing atop a cargo container with the blade resting casually on her shoulder. "You thought one human boarding your ship was stupidity. It wasn't." The commander's blood ran cold as understanding dawned. It was a distraction. The ship shuddered. Somewhere deep in its hull, explosions bloomed. His tactical display erupted with warnings. Human fighters emerging from stealth. Boarding pods attaching to weak points his warriors had left unguarded, while they all rushed to capture one intruder. The woman smiled again, and this time Vexlar saw it for what it truly was. Not the baring of teeth from a frightened prey animal, but the grin of a predator that had outthought its opponent. "Every time you fought us, you focused on what we couldn't do," she said. "You saw our lack of natural weapons, our physical limitations, our short lifespans. But you never asked what we could do. We're the species that looked at the deadliest predators on our world and decided to make them into pets. We're the species that took one of the weakest primate bodies and conquered an entire planet with nothing but our minds and our refusal to give up. The cargo bay doors began to unseal. Human Marines poured through, their weapons ready but their target already secured. "Fourth mistake, Commander," the woman said as she dropped down from the container, landing in a crouch that showed those adaptable human joints at work. "You underestimated us because we don't look dangerous. But humanity didn't get to the stars by being the strongest or the fastest." She stood, meeting Vexillar's 4 eyes with her too. "We got here by being the most stubborn, creative, and adaptive species our world ever produced. We got here by turning every disadvantage into a weapon and every setback into a lesson." As the human Marines secured the bridge and began accepting the surrender of his crew, Vexillar finally understood what the intelligence reports had been trying to tell him. Humanity wasn't dangerous despite their limitations. They were dangerous because of them. The woman holstered the blade and walked past him toward the command deck, pausing only to add one final observation. "Oh, and Commander, your 5th mistake, you actually thought I came here alone." Vexillar looked around at his defeated warriors, his captured flagship, and the human forces now in control of his entire fleet. For the first time in his military career, he had been outmatched not by superior firepower or numbers, but by superior thinking. The Jothic Dominion had learned an important lesson that day, one that would reshape their entire understanding of warfare. Never underestimate a species that learned to thrive by turning weakness into strength. Never underestimate humanity.